Hey there, today I'm going to show you how to paint this mountain landscape. So I was using Turner Acrylic Gouache. You can also use water-soluble gouache or acrylic paint for it. I also used a Moleskine watercolor sketchbook and a palette that came with the specific gouache set that I got. I also put some paper beneath the pages to protect them, and I used Staedtler synthetic brushes. I will try to link the products as best as I can in the description box below. Sometimes some of the products aren't available, but I will try my best. If it's not linked there, then I couldn't find it. So at first I was mixing this mid-tone green, which is almost mint. It's a little bit desaturated, and to desaturate the green tones I love to add a little bit of purple. And so at first I'm just making out the mountains where they're gonna go roughly, and then I used a bit of a darker tone already to make out where some of the shadows are going to go. And this video has a lot of mixing, a lot of going back and forth, and yeah, I just was experimenting a lot. So just if you want to follow along, don't worry too much about the specific colors, just use the colors that you like and feel free to experiment a little bit as well. And here I was doing the sky, and we also have a little bit of light coming from the left side. So I was using this buttery colored tone and trying to blend it a little bit with the blue sky. And if you're using acrylic paint or acrylic gouache, then you have to be rather quick, because once those materials dry, there's no going back. So if you want to blend anything, do it as long as the paint is still wet, or you have to go over it with another layer to be able to blend it again. If you use water-soluble gouache, this is easier because obviously it is water-soluble, so you can just blend it later on. But I just found that acrylic gouache is my favorite medium at the moment. I have a video comparing all of those if you're interested in the differences. So here you can see I tried my best to blend the sky from this blue tone to this buttery tone, and later on I'm gonna add some clouds so the sky doesn't have to be this smooth, perfect gradient. And here you can see that I started to color in this lighter green tone. I'm pretty sure that I added in some purple here as well. Also, a good idea if you want to desaturate your green tone and make it look a little bit more natural is to add a little bit of brown to it. That makes it look more natural. And so I'm not sure if I added brown or purple. Both of those are a good option. And now on the bottom left corner, this area needed a lot of reworking. I went over this multiple times, so you don't have to worry about exactly copying what I'm doing here. This is just the first super rough layer, just so we have some color here already. And yeah. So I was doing all of that, trying to get different shades of green. And also the thing that I used the entire sketchbook pages for two pages for one piece. That's not something that I'm used to. I'm just starting out doing that. I thought that it would be a super fun idea, and at this point I've already done 3 of those, and I think I'm getting better at this, but it is a bigger format that I'm used to personally, so I was struggling just a little bit, but I really want to push myself to try new things, and I'm always torn between only wanting to do things that I'm already good at because I want to teach you all, and I feel kind of weird trying to teach you something that I'm still learning myself, but I also want to push myself to learn new things. And if I do a lot of pieces off camera, then I don't have a lot of time for the pieces on camera, so I decided why not push myself on camera in the tutorials, show you the messy in-betweens when I still don't really know know how to do things or still have to figure out some things. I want to learn and grow and do new things, even if you can see all the messiness. And it's kind of fun to show you the messiness anyways, even if it's in a tutorial setting, because I feel like in tutorials, people have always figured it out already, and you're following along thinking, how are they able to do this so perfectly? Here I am trying to learn something new, not being perfect at all. I just wanted to show you that. And yeah, you can see that I added a lot of green and it's super messy at this point. Now I'm doing a little bit of purple here on this mountain, and this piece took a lot of layers, a lot of going back and forth. I will try to also link the reference picture in the description box. Please someone remind me in case I forget that, because that's something that I probably will forget. But the reference picture is good to see if you want to do it yourself as well, if you want to paint this landscape, because then you can see what I was kind of going for. I was changing it up quite a bit, and some of those changes were intentional, some of them probably weren't. And so my picture doesn't look exactly like the reference picture, but it's good to look at the reference picture just so you know where all the lights and shadows go. And yeah, I also did a few things that are later on ended up covering up again, because I just tried a lot of new things here, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So now I'm mixing another green tone and going over those shadow areas again, and really trying to figure out which colors I want on there and covering up the messiness that I already did. And I decided that I want the paint to look opaque. I don't want this shiny thing where I added a lot of water and this transparent layer kind of. I didn't want that, so I decided to cover it up here in this area especially. You can see it, and I just mixed a similar tone and went over it with full opacity just to cover it up and to, yeah, make it look more opaque, because that was more of the style that I was going for. I didn't want everything to be blended so much, because if you want something to look more blended, then acrylic gouache is probably not the best medium, and then water soluble gouache would be better, because while the water soluble gouache blends very nicely with water. But here that isn't the style that I was going for. I wanted this painterly look, kind of. I wanted this stylized painting, and I'm still figuring out this kind of style, and I'm having so much fun. And it's also a little bit terrifying to try something new, but it's okay. I'm doing that now, and I did 3 of those pieces, and the other 2 are actually a lot more complicated. The next one will be a video next week, and the last one will probably be a Skillshare course, just because it is so much more complicated and it would be too long for YouTube videos. So I'll probably do a Skillshare course just on the piece and really dive into the step by step from the sketch to the finished piece. And yeah, it's probably going to be a Skillshare course. And I'm going in and adding more layers to our mountain landscape. And I love that the sketchbook can handle so much paint, because I was throwing a lot of paint on there. And people often ask me with gouache, if I add a lot of layers, if the paint does crack, because sometimes gouache cracks. I have never noticed that with acrylic gouache. Actually, I don't think that acrylic gouache cracks, or at least not the one that I'm using here, because it's more flexible than water-soluble gouache. But with water-soluble gouache, I can see that sometimes the texture gets a little bit rougher, but I've never had insane amount of cracking. I've never had the piece look super hideous because of that. It has never been a big problem. But yeah, it's something that people have been asking me. So I covered up the bottom left corner, and by now I think it looks so much prettier already. But I went through a little bit of a roller coaster ride with this piece. At first, I absolutely loved it. I was so happy, and with the top part that I started with, and the sky and everything. And then I hated the bottom part, and then I went over it a lot of times, back and forth. And then in the end, I was kind of meh. Then I didn't look at it for a day, and then I looked at the end result again, and then I started to love it. So it was a real roller coaster ride. Just so you know, when you are painting something that's very normal, I think, and probably everyone knows that feeling when they create, that they're kind of torn between emotions and don't know what to think about a piece, and kind of feel scared that they might ruin it, or that it won't turn out the way that they want to. I think that those are very universal emotions. And yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that. So here I'm doing the clouds, and I used the white paint straight out of the tube, and I didn't use any water with it, just my dry brush and the paint straight out of the tube. And for clouds, you could also use Chinese white. We have that in like every student grade watercolor set here, and it has a rougher texture and it makes really nice clouds. But here I was just using the acrylic gouache because I wanted to go for this style. I think that these clouds really fit the style that I was going for. I didn't want them to look too realistic. They just should look super fluffy and painterly kind of, and so I really like those. And I was just doing lines and dots over and over again until I had the shapes of the clouds. And here I started to do a path with this tan color, and I decided that I want to paint some of the rocks that are on the mountain landscape. But you might have realized that they are not there anymore in the finished piece. That's because I decided to get rid of them later on again. And so if you want to paint this as well, maybe skip those rocks, because I ended up hating them and I ended up covering them up. And I tried to make it work. I tried to make the rocky area on the mountains work because it was in the reference picture, but I just did not like it at all. And I liked it way better before. It was so much calmer, but I somehow really wanted to add more details to the piece. I don't know, I thought that it would look more sophisticated if I did, and so I tried to add in all those rocks and little ones in the foreground, but it just didn't work. I didn't like it. I didn't like the brown in the piece. I kept the path but got rid of everything else. Here you can see I decided I just had to get rid of these rocks, of these areas in the background. I also got rid of the little ones in the foreground. And yeah, keeping on making the path look a little bit better, more realistic kind of. The path was okay, it wasn't bothering me too much, so I kept that one. And here I was using a very, very dark green tone, very dark color, to add in more shadows and give everything more depth. And especially if you add those to more of the corner areas or borders of your piece, it will have a little bit more of a vignette, or it will look a little bit more framed, and it might give it a little bit more contrast and life. So I would advise anytime you do something like that, especially with water or something like that, I love to add a few darker areas on the corners just to frame the picture a little bit, to make it a little bit darker. But this was a very, very dark color, and I thought that it looked kind of too much just on the borders, and so I decided I wanted to bring it in the middle part of the piece as well. And I just built up my colors here. I think I made it a little bit, yeah, here I integrated it a little bit more into my piece by doing a bit of a more of a mid-tone color as well, a color that's a little bit between the lighter areas, the green areas, and those darker ones. And this just makes it go a little bit better within the piece, but I also covered up a little bit of the darker areas just to make it go even better with the piece itself. And I think that really made it a little bit more realistic and look a little bit more sophisticated. And here I was finally done with those rocks, and I decided to mix a similar tone to the green tone that I already had on there and just go over it and cover it up, get rid of those. I could have left the ones in the back. Now looking at it, I don't hate those. I think that they look actually cute, but I covered those up. Or no, I didn't. I kept them. Oh my gosh, here's the finished piece. I really hope that you liked this tutorial. If you did so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.